Hi, I'm John Mandyck, CEO of Urban Green Council. This is a special edition of Urban Green Live, where I sat down for a fireside chat with Gina McCarthy at our gala. Gina led national climate policy first as the EPA administrator for President Obama, and then as the first White House National Climate Advisor for President Biden. She's insightful, inspirational, witty, and as you'll see, always candid. I hope you enjoy the program.
Gina, congratulations. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
We're really
Good to be
excited.
here.
We're going to do a little fireside chat. We thought that would be fun for our audience tonight. So let's start kind of at the big picture, at the high level.
Okay.
You helped shape our national climate policy when it was needed most. Is there a moment or two that particularly stands out for you from your time in the White House? Maybe a particular revelation or an inspiration or a breakthrough that's still vivid today?
I don't find myself being very inspirational these days, but really, I'll take it back one step before the White House, and that is, it was the beginning of the new administration, and COVID was really inundating and devastating our economy, and our health and our livelihoods. And, the thing that pops up the most to me, John, is not what happened when I joined the administration, but it was the phone call that President Biden made to me to convince me to join the administration, because frankly, I didn't want to do it. NRDC was the first job I ever had that paid more than a couple of $100,000. And I'm like, God, so I just got this job at NRDC, and all of a sudden the economy caves, COVID's out, everybody's gone home, and I'm sitting at home going, what do I do now? And so when he called me, his framing of this issue was really interesting, because he knew I was in it for climate. That's what I was doing with my life. But he said, Gina, we have to rebuild the economy. We have to grow jobs. We have to clean the air and make it healthy for people. And we really need to sit down and talk about how we do that by investing in people. He said, so I really need to have you to start framing that out. And that was what my life ended up being. And what still is really engaging me on this is that he realized that if you took over a presidency at that point in time and you started talking about climate as a burden, climate as a moment of sacrifice, you could call it a day, go home, and no one would ever miss you, right? It had to be, we have the opportunity of a lifetime to rebuild our economy, to grow good jobs. When that framing came up, that was the beginning of how we would fashion an Inflation Reduction Act. And that was how it ended up. It was an investment strategy in human beings again, a way to build communities, especially the communities that had been left behind, and how to really grow good jobs and make the United States hum again economically. And I'll be damned, it worked. I guess he was smarter than I ever gave him credit for.
You've certainly been on the front lines of climate change. How do you assess the state of decarbonization today? Maybe first let's start in the US and then globally. Like, are you optimistic? Are you concerned?
Well, I will readily admit that I am an optimistic person from day one, because I don't know what the alternative is, frankly. I can't stand people who go around going, oh, it's me, I didn't make this, I didn't do that. I just totally ignore those people. And so I do think that right now in the United States, And frankly, it's because of the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act. You know, it has started that opportunistic framing, that I can do it framing, that opportunity to really build new technologies and products and processes that make things come alive again. So I feel really good right now about what's happening in the United States. I mean, we're talking about, you know, $500 billion with a B, billion dollars of private sector investment, 330,000 new clean energy jobs. We're talking about 646 projects that are already, you know, making progress and going to be delivered. So all of that just says to me that we had a void. It's getting filled, and I think people are feeling the energy and excitement. So, and that's, I think, what the Inflation Reduction Act was supposed to be, and we're in our just first couple of years of a 10-year horizon. And already we are seeing folks wanting to do more, and I'm all for that. So I think in the US we're doing pretty well, and in fact, if you look at folks in Canada, in the EU, and across the international community, you know, they're all envious of what we did with the Inflation Reduction Act in particular. And they want to figure out the same kind of strategy where they are. But there are significant challenges internationally, as we all know, and especially challenges to get the kind of investment we need in the global south, because everybody needs to see their boats rise, right? And it remains very challenging to figure out how to do that with some of the debt that's been accrued in those countries and the challenges that we have facing us.
What surprised you the most in the fight for climate progress?
That it worked. I guess maybe the most surprising thing to me was that underneath all the rancor between Democrats and Republicans during the past, I don't know, 8 years or so, which is new to me because frankly I've been in government for a really long time, and like 40 some odd years, and I always found a way to bridge the gap between Republicans and Democrats. There was a place for it. And so I think one of the things that really I've found intriguing is that as the Inflation Reduction Act money has been expended, at least some portions of it, we realize that the Republican jurisdictions in districts have received the vast majority of money. Now, that shouldn't surprise anybody. We designed it that way. Shh. But it also was because those are the areas that were most devastated by manufacturing loss. You know, we needed to rebuild our manufacturing sector. And so what is increasingly surprising to me is that Republicans are both recognizing that they have to get away, many of them, from this rancor and this lack of communication and this I'll destroy anything the Democrats do, into a much different framing, because they're seeing their communities being invested in. So they can no longer just sit on the sidelines. And we're seeing letters being signed by lots of Republicans saying, no matter what happens in the next election, we are going to stick with the Inflation Reduction Act. And I think that makes sense from them as politicians. That's their communities, and you can't walk away from great investment opportunities. But it's maybe just some kind of a sign that we're going to go back to a democracy again, you know, where we can hang out with each other and disagree, but not be so disagreeable. Ew.
Maybe building on that, if you had the power to change one thing, anywhere, anyhow, to accelerate climate progress, what would it be?
Geez, that's a really, really tough question. and I don't have a really, really snappy answer to that question. You know, I think I would change the narrative. You know, the thing that I keep bothering people about is that in my world, people love to talk about greenhouse gas emissions, which is lovely. I mean, we can talk about how many tons of greenhouse, but human beings don't give a damn. I caught myself, Maggie. My daughter's here, and I almost said shit. People don't care about greenhouse gas emissions. You know, I mean, and I'm not saying that negatively, like they're not smart enough to care about it, but they care about their families. They care about their health, their future for their grandchildren, like my 5 little grandchildren. That's all I care about, other than Maggie, of course, and her brother and sister. So I think the thing that I would change is the narrative. I really would try to personalize this issue a lot more, to talk about the human benefits from looking at the opportunity we have today to change the climate paradigm. You know, and really to show people that this is the world we want to build for our kids and our families. I want it to be personal. I want people to stop talking about greenhouse gas emissions and really talk about our world, our kids, our families, and how we can make this the best future ever for them. And if we do that, I think it makes a world of difference. And over time, that's changing, because we are getting money out there. Communities are seeing a difference, especially communities left behind are sort of jumping for joy, saying, isn't it about time that I had an opportunity to get to the middle class? And all of that is really uplifting and, you know, maintains my sense of optimism no matter what happens.
Maybe lightening the mood a little bit, and I think people have already seen this, but people who know you know that you have a Boston wicked sense of humor.
Sometimes. Some people just think I'm wicked.
Is there a particular time that stands out as especially funny for you, either in the Obama or Biden administrations or both?
You know, I have been really struggling because you asked me to think about this question. And I came to realize that neither of those administrations were particularly funny. I'm sitting there saying, was Obama funny? Individually, he was. You know, he liked to chew gum. I liked to chew gum. That was not humorous. It was just kind of quirky. And I tried to think of Biden, and he's lovely, but he's not particularly funny. So the only thing I could, literally the only thing I could come up with, and I feel really badly about this because EPA was a great place to be, it was just not funny, is that there was a point in time where I went to congressional hearings every friggin' week. It was endless. They just wanted to torture me. And so I learned, you know, that the only way to deal with it was to not argue with anything. You just answer the questions, then you'd get battered. And all through the battering, I'd just go, A little smile, like, yes, I acknowledge what you're saying. And one hearing I was at, I was sitting at the table, and the way this works is Congress is there, you're facing them, you never face anything else. And you always have your person behind you from the administration to protect you if you really screw up. They'll throw a note and say, you screwed this up, fix it, you know? Which sometimes it's a really good idea. And Laura Vaught was behind me, who was my person managing these congressional hearings. And I was answering a question, and all of a sudden, everybody started giggling and laughing. Well, behind me, you know, and I'm like, what did I fart or something? I'm like, what happened? So they're giggling and giggling and giggling. And I just kept my view, and I kept my little light like that, and there were some folks in Congress that started giggling, and I'm like, oh my God, what is it? And we got through that period of time. We left. We never knew. We were like talking to each other, going, what happened? Why were they giggling and laughing? And I never knew until the next morning was on the front of the New York Times. There was a picture of me sitting at that table, Laura Vaught behind me, and all of the audience behind there were young people with tin hats on, made out of aluminum foil. Now, it was only funny because I realized what a moron I must have looked like and them behind me. But what the hell did they put aluminum foil on their heads for? I have never figured this out. I feel like finding out who they were and why they were wearing that. What did it mean? Fundamentally, it must have meant I was an asshole, right? And they're trying to connect with higher beings. That's all I could think of. I'm sorry, I used another bad word. But I'm out of government and I don't care.
I wish we
Does
could.
anybody else know about these tin hats? If you know, let me know.
Yeah. I wish we could go on, but we have time for one more question.
Okay.
One more. This is an amazing room of climate warriors. You've met
Yeah.
most of them tonight, many of them, and you'll meet some more. What advice do you have for us all?
My advice is to keep doing exactly what you're doing. I've been enormously impressed with the work that is going on, not just by Urban Green, which is terrific, but just across the agencies and organizations and NGOs that are working so hard on this. Look, I joke about climate because it's fun to, and because I always felt that, you know, it is such a dire situation where we need to really deploy clean energy so much more quickly than we are now. But I feel like those opportunities exist in front of us. And we have to, you know, keep being as hopeful and opportunistic as can be. But honestly, the thing that really ticked me off when I was in Connecticut is New York was always 10 steps ahead. And it's a gift. The work you do is a gift to all of us, because I think, as we all know, if New York can change the dynamics, not just in buildings, but in the way in which we really move forward with reductions that are so important to our kids and our families, I think it's a gift that will keep on giving. So I have no interest in telling you what your business is. My interest is figuring out how we can really share your knowledge and expertise and enthusiasm and the gravitas that you really bring to these issues, and expedite that throughout our country and, frankly, throughout the world. Because now's the time to move. Now is the only time we have available to us to actually make climate change stop in its tracks and make humanity be the benefit of that. So thank you for everything you're doing, and thank Urban Green for allowing me to be here, and I apologize for all of my cuss words.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gina McCarthy.